Oh, Gwilym, I'm struggling this morning. I don't know about you, mate.
You need to toughen up, Lee. That's all I can say.
I mean, these podcasts don't always go out in the order that we record them, so this might not make sense to anyone listening, but we did our first podcast yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah, this is it's our third podcast in 24 hours.
Yeah. It's a bit of a podcast-a-thon.
Well, I can tell you about my gig last night, Lee, because when I left you, I was off to see Elbow, and I have to say that it's not often that I go to a gig and I feel like one of the youngsters in the room, but they've got a very clear-cut fan base. In their defense, they were absolutely brilliant, and they did that big famous song at the end, and my voice is a bit croaky. It's because I got stuck in the anthem like everybody else.
So I don't know that big famous song. You might have to sing it for me so I can...
It's something with curtains.
You must remember I'm still stuck in the 80s.
Punk, you're a punk, aren't you?
Kind of late. I was a late punk.
Who's that then? Who are your bands? Who are your theme bands?
Oh, blimey. Well, probably the first band I ever remember really getting into was the Stranglers.
That's cool.
JJ Burrell was on Breakfast Telly yesterday, actually, which was interesting to listen to him. They're gearing up for a fresh tour. I was never a Pistols person, really.
No. Did you have a punk look?
Well, do you know what? The interesting thing was I didn't particularly. I looked a bit like an old mod. But the great thing about the punk scene back then was it didn't really matter what you looked like. You were part of it, irrespective. So I would have my candy striped boater on, and I like my winkle picker shoes back then, same as I do now.
Did you say candy striped boater?
Boating jacket, blazer thing. Yeah,
that's deeply it's not like glam rock, isn't it? And winkle pickers, good grief.
Lee Davis and Gwilym Roberts are the two IPs in a pod, and you are listening to a podcast on intellectual property, brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys.
Anyway, we're being quite rude because we've got two amazing guests on today. And
to be fair, I want to hear more about you in the 80s. I think that's a more fascinating topic.
Annsley and Rose, we probably ought to introduce you because at the moment you're just disembodied voices coming over the airwaves. So we've got a bit of an IPKat blog special going on today, and we've got Annsley Merrill Ward and Rose Hughes with us. It's not often we get to scoop the IPKat, but we've done it today. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you very much.
How are you both?
Great. It's a pleasure to be here.
Where are you both? Where are you appearing from?
Yeah, still working at home. So Cambridge is where I'm based, Cambridge, UK.
I'm also at home. I'm in South Kensington, but I'm actually about to head into work. So the slow crawl back to quote unquote normality is kind of dawning upon me. But this has been our little working environment for IPKat and normal day-to-day work for coming up almost 2 years now. It's hard to believe.
I had my first day in the office yesterday for 18 months, which was just mad. And I felt like a fish out of water. It was a surreal experience. I might not go back for another 18 months.
It is a little bit like the day after tomorrow when you go into the office, because everything that you left, that Friday before the lockdown is still where it was, and papers haven't changed. There might be a mouse moving around, but it was a real odd experience walking in there. It's like a zombie apocalypse story.
Absolutely, yeah.
I've been given a shirt by someone who left it there before lockdown and then spent lockdown losing loads and loads of weight. So then now the shirt's just way too big for them. So I've got the shirt, which means they must be really, really small now I say that.
I had the opposite experience. I popped down to the basement to look in we've got a little wardrobe down there, and looked at all of the clothes that I can no longer get into. So my drive is within the next 6 months I'll be able to use that clothes in the wardrobe again, if they've not been done in by the moths, that is. So where should we start? So I remember the first time I came across the IPKat was I'd been at SEPA for maybe 2 days, and Mick Ralph, who I kind of inherited SEPA from, said to me, you must bookmark this website and you must go there every day to read everything that you'll ever need to know about the IP world. And it was a good shout from Mick, because I do visit quite a lot. I'm never brave enough to venture into the comment section and leave a comment or anything like that.
Yes, it can be a bit of a wild west depending on the post. I think Rose has experienced, because she does such incredible reporting on the EPO decisions, that they get a lot of attention, and people are not shy with what they have to say about what's going on at the EPO.
Yeah, I think patent attorneys in particular, they do like things to be correct, and they do have strong opinions and like to argue for their opinions. I think it is an environment ideally suited to the patent attorney debate.
It's an interesting read, the comment section, I have to say.
Is it a healthy debate? Because I mean, I try and avoid reading comments on almost all media because I just get sad or angry typically. But I mean, do you find it pushes things forward?
On the whole, they do. We have a moderation policy where we will look at comments and decide whether or not to publish them on the basis that it's substantive and it does drive the debate forward. If it's snarky or if it's personal or it's anything like that, that's just not the place for IPKat. You can have that snarky debate on your own blog if you care that much about it. But we're very much of the view that if you're not adding to the discussion, we're not going to publish it. And we get a lot of vitriol for not publishing people's comments. Sometimes we'll get emails, we'll get repeat comments being like, oh, IPKat is censoring things. And it's like, well, no, we're not censoring anything. We're not a government agency. We are an independent blog, and the whole purpose is to drive things forward. So by and large, I think it's been pretty constructive. You do on occasion get the comment about correcting your grammar or if they spot a typo, which is of course always welcome, but sometimes a little eye rolling at the same time. But I mean, that's been my experience. What do you think, Rose?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a lot of the time, because you do have attorneys and lawyers actually reading and engaging, you do learn things as well just from the comments. I learn things from what people put into the comments and provide their own experiences. So I think it's actually a very useful thing to still have there, because I think during some of the more controversial EPO politic era, there's been some problems with the comments and having to look at them a little bit more, because there can be some really, really terrible things said. But I think on balance, it's good that we still provide the opportunity for people to comment and engage, because so much good experiences come through it.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, how highly skilled, knowledgeable, professional people, which your readership clearly is, can disintegrate into some kind of frothing, bubbling mass of fury.
On the positive side, I think posts about exams, I think the comments have been very useful, actually. So I think people do like to comment about the exams. I think there's a post that these days we get the most comments on, but it's one of the only forums actually where that's been the case and where people can discuss what their exam experiences are and things. I think it's a good forum for that, at least. Again, often they are anonymous and often it can get a little bit repetitive, but it just shows how much sort of feeling there is out there on some of these topics.
And some of the comments can be quite long, can't they?
One of my favourite comments of all time was on FP4 P6, which was a guy who gave us the history of P6 through the ages, from the first time he did P6 many decades ago, and going through all the different types of exams. So yeah, they can be very entertaining as well, and you say essays, some of them.
Yeah, and it's an amazing historical record of how things have changed and passed. I mean, IPKat was founded in 2003, so we can really look at the posts and the comments to see how attitudes have changed or how things have progressed. The exam story has been a really good one to kind of monitor how the exam process has changed over time. And with the pandemic, how engaged I think our readership was in trying to correct a system that they felt was kind of failing them in many ways. And Rose's posts on that really brought to light. And, we know that the people who are in charge of various things are reading and are listening. So whether or not they take things on board or learning from it, that can only be a good thing. So I think that's a real testament to Rose's reporting on that and getting those breaking stories. I get these text messages in the middle of my day. Sometimes I'm in a call or something. I get Rose saying there's an urgent post about the exams. It should probably go out as soon as possible. And I'm like on my phone, and looking at it. And within 20 minutes, we had probably 20 comments on it. It was really quite a phenomenon.
How invasive is it in your lives? How much time does it take you?
So when I first started and when I was a junior lawyer, it was every weekend. I probably spent 16 hours a weekend. I mean, it was 8 hours each day, doing the research, pulling things together. And of course, at that stage, I was junior enough to think, oh my God, as soon as I press publish, the judge is going to read it, competitors are going to read it, clients are going to read it. And so you're really kind of freaking out and checking every, comma and everything. As time has moved on, you feel a little bit more confident in your posting. You're posting on things that interest you more. And now that I'm a permacat with Eleonora and Neil, a lot of our time is spent editing, spent delegating articles, sourcing people to write. So now it's probably about 10 to 15 hours a week. It's not that much different, but it's a different kind of job. Whereas, Rose's experience will be a little bit different from mine because she is really on the front line, getting the decisions in and looking at the EPO decisions and writing. So I don't know, Rose, how are you spending your time on the IPKat?
Similar at the start as well. I think when I started as a intern cat, as a trainee patent attorney, and I think at that point, it did take a long time just to do the first post on substantive issues, because again, you say you're worried about saying the wrong thing and you want to double check everything, and there's lots of research. But as I've spent years and got promoted to guest cat, I think you start writing about sort of a series of cases, so you know the back history of the cases, so it's a lot easier to go back and work out what the context is, and you just speed up a lot in writing the post. So I think it's a portion of my weekend is always spent doing usually an IPKat post, but during lockdown that's been no bad things get me occupied. I think I generally am able to learn most about case law if I write a post about it as opposed to reading anybody else's. I think that's where you really you make yourself form an opinion upon it, and so in other ways it really helps the day job as well.
The reports that you do, I mean, everyone reads your blog because it's got all the up-to-date stuff and it's got some really good opinion as well. And the EPO stuff, Rose, I love. So thank you for that. I've got a silly question, then a sensible one. I'm picking up quite a few job titles here. I've got intern cat, guest cat, and permacat. That sounds like I've got the hierarchy in the right direction. Is there kind of an uber-cat?
I mean, the uber-cat would be Jeremy Phillips, of course, who founded and created the blog. But yeah, so we those titles are relatively new. They came in when Jeremy decided to step down from IPKat, and we needed a little bit of a structure to try to keep the blog going because, I mean, no one could keep up with Jeremy. His ability to post, to do things with kind of rapid response, to engage with the comments, to, just maintain it. He did an incredible amount of work. And I mean, no human being, and I doubt that he is a human in the sense that he is just so extraordinary in the capacity that he has to assimilate information and communicate it in such an incredible way. Nobody could match that. So what we did was the longest standing members, which at that time were a few more of us than there are now, but which are now me, Eleonora, and Neil, became the permacat. So we kind of deal with the direction, we deal with any complaints, we deal with any comments, we deal with the emails, we review and edit posts. And then we have our guest cats, which Rose is a part of that team, who have a lot more kind of independence to write what they want to come up with ideas, to post, and they have all that functionality. And then the kind of entry level to get into IPKat and amongst the ranks is the intern cat. And that is a way for especially junior lawyers to kind of get into the IP field, start writing about it, understand who's who, what's going on, do kind of what we have these miscellany posts with different topics, look at the forthcoming events, attend events. We get a lot of free tickets to go to events, to report on them, attend those events for free, and kind of get their name out there. And then depending on, how much they do and how keen they are and what their work product is, and they get promoted like Rose did to a guest cat. So we do have that kind of hierarchy. We have some other random cats. We have a techie cat who helps us with all the technical issues that we have with Blogger and that interface and, coding in HTML, et cetera. And we have a book review cat, and we have, various other little machinations, but it's all trying to mirror the amazing work that Jeremy did from one person to multiple people.
Well, today we're happy to confer on you a new title, which is Podcats. Thank you very much. Last 3 minutes is all building up to that, by the way.
Your work here is done, Gwilym.
I would have cut my answer short if I knew we were leading up to that gem. That's amazing.
And sorry, Lee, I've got another question actually, if that's all right, which is I was actually taught by Jeremy in about 1993 3 or something like that, and I got to know him quite well through various bits and pieces. And his energy was, as you say, unbelievable. And this wasn't the only thing. This is not his only legacy. There's all kinds of stuff. One thing I thought he was fabulous for, and I've never known anyone bring it to the profession in the same way, was actually, it sounds a bit odd, but there's something almost spiritual sometimes about the way he wrote. And he would write some quite powerful pieces every now and then. If there was a tragedy or something, I would go to the IPKat actually to see what Jeremy had to say about it. I've never seen that before or since in the profession. I know he's a very religious guy anyway, so that might have been part of the story, but that was an amazing skill he brought.
Yeah, and I think a little bit ironic given the cat nature of our blog, but it's very human. And he was very good about humanizing things in the profession back down to the very basic level, which is that everything that happens in our profession, every decision that's made, every patent that's applied for has a human story. From the human invention, from the human who decides it, from the human who argues it, to the human who reads it. And you kind of saw his spirituality in that context, that he was very skilled at bringing it back down to the very basics to remind ourselves of our own humanity and all of that entails the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the sad and the happy, so that it wasn't just, here's another decision by Mr. Justice, whoever. It wasn't like that. It had a bit more of a sense of humanity about it. And I think that no one can match or mirror that. But I think for many of us, we all have different styles, and we ensure that our own personality and our humanity is expressed in our writing. And I think we're probably one of the few IP resources who do, sadly, obituaries, because we do recognize the importance of the people in our profession and the legacy that they have given us when they leave us. And it can be really emotional, I think, for everyone, reading and writing those posts, because it does remind you that, at the end of the day, and I hate that expression, but at the end of the day, we are who we are. We make up this profession. We're all humans. We have all different things to contribute. So I agree with you that, Jeremy had that incredible skill.
We've been using the cat references as if it's a perfectly natural, normal thing to do, but it isn't, is it? Where does the cat thing come from?
It honestly came about, and this is so weird because it came about in 2003 because the founders of the blog, Jeremy and Alana, and the original kind of members all had cats. Jeremy was a cat owner. I'm not sure if he still is. He must be. And there's so many cats going in and out of their lives that the cat just came about naturally from the start. And funnily enough, so many of our members have cats now. I have a cat, Rose. I think, do you have 1 or 2 cats?
I actually have 3 cats now. They've grown.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But I don't think it's a natural requirement. You don't need a cat, do you, to write the blog? But I think possibly
no, you don't need a cat. But exactly, we seem to attract a lot of cats, and then we get a lot of photos from it. And it was before, amazing foresight by Jeremy. It was before like cat memes and cats taking over the internet. Yeah. It was 2003, remember, was a thing. So, incredible kind of marketing foresight on his part. But we are very much cat lovers, but we're dog lovers too. I think cat lovers will always say that we love cats, but we love dogs too. There's no dog hate on our blog. Every animal is welcome.
IP dog just wouldn't have had the same ring though, would it? Doesn't work.
Well, you say this, there is a blog called IP Watchdog based out of Texas. So there's a dog prowling around, but we have quite an army of cats on the other side of the Atlantic.
And the other thing that I find about it, I've been super 10 years now. And in that time, the IPKat, it's not really changed. It still looks and feels exactly the same as it did. I'll try and say this in a nice friendly way. I was talking to Gwilym earlier about asking this question, and he said, make sure you're not rude when you ask it. So I'll try and not be rude. The tech's a bit antiquated, isn't it? It's still old blogger stuff. And
yeah.
is that a deliberate strategy to keep it sort of embedded in that early days stuff?
Yeah, it is. It is. We've had many debates about whether we need to modernize and do a different look or anything like that. And although there's sometimes that temptation, we actually have quite embraced the kind of old school, what year is this blog actually being written in kind of look. because I think we thought it, people are accustomed to what they know and how that kind of continuity in things, there's always a lot of, hoo-ha when things get rebranded or things have a good look or a new revamped look. And we've kind of embraced the kind of old schoolness about it. And even when we made some changes a few years ago, we were really worried about it. I mean, it's a little bit more updated than it used to look, 10 years ago. But we're thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to get a lot of hate for this? The logo is a little bit more streamlined. There's a little bit more functionality, and even that was pushing the boat out. But it was a deliberate decision to embrace that kind of look.
How do you find the tech, Rose? Is it easy and intuitive when you're doing your thing?
There's always sort of a beginning problem when you're doing these things for the first time, but yeah, there's no problem. There's always Blogger is not the best of programs to use, but yeah, no real issues I think ever with the tech aspect of it all. Again, we have IPKat, who is amazing at helping us out with all the issues. So.
Of course, you've got a IPKat. Of course, you have it.
I was actually going to say that it does seem like, yeah, I think I can see the charm of it, which works really well. The fact is, it comes through Twitter, it comes through all the feeds, so it's very easy for the user to go into it. It's interesting about your demographic. I was wondering about that. I mean, Rose, you mentioned a lot of the commenters are on the exams, so that's going to be. I tell you now that is people who've still got the exams to take, because once you pass the exams, I've noticed this in 30 years of doing this. You complain, pass, and forget about it and move on. You never go back and sort it out, except for the wonderful people who do exam marking and the PB and all that. But most people just move on. So that suggests there's a demographic element there. You've definitely got the young demographic absolutely involved. On the other hand, I think the old tech probably charms people like me and Lee. I still think the internet's pretty modern, by the way. Well done for using that. I think it's a great tool, and delighted to see it being used so enthusiastically. But it's amazing, actually, that I wouldn't say, and we may get attacked, and if we have a comment section, we may get attacked on this. I wouldn't say there's a lot of competition. Even now, nobody's quite managed to replicate this lovely niche you've occupied.
Yeah, and I think that is because we, unlike so many now, are a free resource, right? So many IP resources have gone behind the wall. So many have some things that are accessible, but then there's premium content. But we're free and accessible for everyone and anyone. And that will be the case for as long as I have any breath on the IPKat. And we all come from different disciplines, different perspectives, different professions, don't agree with each other on a lot of things. There's active discord, but we're all writing for free. Nobody gets paid for the love of the cat. And that is, again, the kind of the difference that kind of makes it unique. I mean, Rose, what do you think, coming from kind of the outside so many years ago and then coming into the ranks and the inner echelons, what do you think is making that kind of niche unique for the IPKat?
Yeah, I think part of it may be also, there's a lot of blogs out there written by firms and companies and things, which I think can be a little bit from a particular perspective, where I think IPKat is more objective in a sense, or it has a broader view and less focused on advertising ourselves and more about the actual the cases and the decisions and things. I think that helps a lot with the tone, I think, of IPKat, making it a good resource for people.
We've talked about the EPO quite a lot, but you guys got your fingers as on the pulse as it can be. You practically got it inside the aorta. How's that for relevant? Sorry, it's a bit early, isn't it? But
you're on fire today.
How are you feeling, Lee?
It's that elbow concert. It's inspired me.
You are a stent.
So you guys have got your thumbs in the aorta. What are the other hot topics outside the EPO? Which we know there's loads going on there. What else is catching the eye? What's getting all the comments?
Well, UPC and Brexit is always one. I think we thought maybe Brexit would be less of a thing now by this point, but yeah, I think the Unity Patent Court is one to watch in the coming months.
Yeah, I was going to say, before you were talking about the future, what were some of the big stories of the past? And I was going to say the UPC posts, and I started writing them in 2010, back when everything was before everything was done, and there was a lot of discord from the profession about what this was going to mean. And I was quite against the UPC because I thought, oh gosh, it's going to create a lot of problems, and the rules are going to create issues of bifurcation and all this other thing. other things that we thought were problematic. And then the profession shifted views and we're like, okay, if it's happening, then we want the central division here in London. And then it was a whole political storm and no one knew what was happening at, either in Westminster or in Brussels. And the amount of comments that we got on those posts was just extraordinary. And now when anyone posts about the UPC, there's immediate commenting, there's immediate trolling of our content. It's really quite incredibly divisive, the UPC still. And, I think there's a lot of uncertainty from a UK perspective as to what that's going to mean for the profession in the UK moving forward if it gets up and running. So I think a lot of that commenting is coming from a place of uncertainty. The kind of are we out? Now we're out. What's that going to mean? Are we going to be able to do that work, et cetera? And for me, also moving forward, the thing that I get a lot of comments about is any post to do with SCPs in France. It's the new UPC in terms of divisiveness and commenting. And I think you're seeing a lot of people either celebrating the UK being a very attractive forum for SCP owners and for non-practicing entities, and the kind of what people would say the overreach of the UK Supreme Court in determining a global FRAN license, and that debate and the competition between our courts and Chinese courts or courts in the Eastern District of Texas. So it's a real global debate about where these cases should be determined and who should be deciding them and how far they should go from a kind of a global comity basis. So that is going to continue to rumble on for years until some of the standard setting organizations sort things out. But I know Rose has a particular bugbear about AI and the comments that we get on that.
I've had an argument with you about AI, Rose, I think somewhere for a discussion anyway. I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah, do keep trying to sort of bang the drum from my perspective of, well, I think when I'm interested in the sort of AI inventorship question, it's more that I'm kind of not interested in it and everyone else seems to be really interested in it. So that's my sort of main point of view. And I think it's a debate that is either too premature or unnecessary with regards to the actual day-to-day lives of patent attorneys and actual patent law. And I think it's maybe on the fringes of IP academia and things that it's such a big issue, but for the practicalities, it's not, and it's just become a sort of a hyped up topic. So I do keep meaning not to keep writing about it, but then sort of the pressure builds again that everyone else is writing that I want to address their issues. So yeah, probably there will be more posts on AI inventorship.
We had that very nice Mr. Ryan Abbott. Was it Professor Ryan Abbott? I can't remember, but Ryan was on one of our podcasts. So
he did the podcast and he did Congress last week.
Yeah, so we need that. We need the balance because we are, like you, editorially completely balanced on all topics except the IP's awesome. That we know. Oh, on which point, actually, out of interest, are you seeing a lot of excitement about the vaccine waiver discussion, the WTO negotiations at the moment?
Not really on the blog per se, but I've seen a lot of commentary elsewhere, a lot of kind of politicization of it. I know Rose is nodding right now. I'll let Rose speak.
Yeah, I think we've had a few posts from different views, a few guest posts on it, which I think have been good and balanced. So we've had both sides of the argument on. Yeah, a good thing to have on. Yeah, I think possibly again it's another topic that will come up in future, and it will, as decisions get made, become more of a thing. One other thing I was saying we probably will be expecting coming up is VICO, obviously. VICO oral proceedings, which are one of the controversial topics of the year, possibly. And given that we still have no answer on this from the Enlarged Board of Appeal, I expect this to be rumbling on for years to come. So, and that is also something which does create lots of commentary and lots of disagreement, let's say.
Go on, Gwilym, fill your boots. In you go now.
No, never. What, me? No. I stick with SEPA's line that video conferencing is a fantastic forum if it proves fit for purpose. Lucky it is doing so, so there we go. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of the consultation. I do wonder whether national lines are starting to be drawn, which isn't really the point, but I'm not going to suggest that anybody isn't bearing in mind their own practice when they comment on how it works. So fingers crossed it'll come down. I think I read your note on the enlarged board decision, and I'm more scared of the enlarged board than you are, I think, Rose, but I was a little bit disappointed. Maybe the written decision's not out, that's right, is it? So maybe that will help. So, yeah, maybe that'll help. I did read your very interesting note about the fact that it's clearly already being gamed, and the meaning of an emergency situation is being queried, and people are, not unsurprisingly, using the opportunity to go or not to go as part of the kind of general litigation strategy rather than necessarily just for the specific merits of video conferencing. And that's inevitable, unfortunately. It's inevitable. It's what people do. They use the rules.
Yeah, indeed. I think delaying is always going to have been a tactic, isn't it? The UPS, I think, and it's just another tool in that box.
Yeah. Yep.
Are there any areas that you would want to sort of move the blog into that you're struggling to get content for? Or do you find it easy to pick up folk who can add value?
I think one of the priorities for us is to ensure that we're getting more content from major markets such as China and getting those reports done, and also looking at other markets in Africa and in South America. A lot of the majority of our readership is actually coming from the US and parts of Asia now.
Okay.
So not Europe is very, very high, of course, but we're getting more hits from those markets. And that's probably because we have a lot of European content and they want to know what's going on here. But equally, we think it's important to ensure that the voices and stories and cases from markets like China are also being represented. It can be difficult finding folks who want to spend their free time and write. Sometimes we are, hitting them away with sticks because we're getting so many proposals for posts. And sometimes trying to get people to write on an interesting decision can be difficult because, you are asking them to do something in their free time. They're not going to be compensated for it. They'll get a lot of, profile raising, all the other great things, but it's still a time suck for a lot of people. And other times people are conflicted. So we have to operate in the bounds of what's possible to write about. There's many things I can't write about because I'm acting cases. There's, obviously things Rose can't write about, anything to do with a lot of the COVID vaccine, issues, et cetera. And so we have to try to source people that are free and able and willing to do that. And sometimes it's great. And sometimes, with the pandemic, people have other priorities and they want to go do something else besides stare at the computer any longer. But generally we have a good pool of folks.
It may not have occurred to people that they can write for your blog. I mean, would you be urging people on this podcast, if you've got something they think is worth mentioning, to drop you a line and make a proposal?
Oh, for sure. We would be delighted to hear from you. We welcome it from anyone who has something interesting to say about a topic. We are really trying to find people who have different takes of things, some more opinion pieces about, what does a decision mean, or what's the direction of travel on something. Or, if you're a junior lawyer, and this is how I really encourage so many junior lawyers to get involved in writing and the profession is to. And if you're too worried about taking the position one way or the other, or you don't feel like you can at your law firm, just to write a summary piece about a decision or about a bit of legislation or about an EPO case. And as if you're teaching a class to someone who doesn't know anything about it, it's a great way to learn how to communicate decisions to people, including clients who maybe aren't from your jurisdiction, to write concisely and to do all that research. As Rose said, the best way to learn about something is to write about it and to communicate about it and essentially teach people about it through the IPKat post. So anything that you're interested in, just let me or Rose know, and we'd be really happy to work with you.
So what does the future hold? What's next for IPKat? What's big on the horizon?
Well, I think it's personal to a lot of people, but, as I was saying earlier, for us, it's trying to make sure that we are representing the IP stories from around the world in jurisdictions that many of us are maybe not that familiar with, and doing more of that education piece. That's personally important to me because I've seen over particularly the last 5 years, I think really since Brexit, that IP has become very politicized in terms of, we've seen it with the vaccine waiver, we've seen it with the UPC, we're seeing it with the SCP-FRAN debate. You were talking, Gwilym, about the VICO submissions and things being drawn around national lines. We start to see that more and more, which worries me because the way that we can achieve the best system for IP and innovation and onward creation is to understand where each other are coming a bit more, to find solutions that do not divide us across borders. And a really important way of doing that is to give people that access to understanding different perspectives that differ from theirs, be it on an issue or be it from a different jurisdiction, and what might be motivating kind of positions along national lines. And so I think that for me is incredibly important. I want to make sure that our profession does not start identifying itself as being a UK lawyer or a French patent attorney or whatever, that we are actually lawyers and IP lawyers as part of a wider profession trying to move towards the same goal.
How about you, Rose? What are you looking forward to covering in the coming months?
Well, I think sort of seconding that, but also I think I've been a tendency a bit UK centric so far. It's very easy to read the UK court decisions and the things that come here, whereas I think a broader perspective looking at decisions around Europe possibly will help flesh out a bit of the sort of the context of things more. I think the decisions in UK also do reference ones in Germany and France and elsewhere, but I think having a broader view of that and reporting where the decisions on the blog will be a good development and provide a little bit more backstory for people.
Well, thank you both for sharing your time with us this morning. It's been fascinating to get an insight into where the blog came from and how it's developed. It's clearly got a strong future, hasn't it? We've touched on people making contributions. What about if someone wants to do more than that? What about if someone wants to work their way into the inside? So to become an intern cat or a guest cat or whatever it might be, how do you recruit to your team?
We still have openings available. Not sure when the deadline was, but we did recently have a call for new guest cats and intern cats. And yeah, if anyone sees any of these postings, I would always encourage people to apply. Because I remember when I was reading IPKat back when I was a trainee, and I saw the call come out for intern cats, and I was like, oh, should I apply? Do I have enough experience? Will I be able to write enough? Will I have time? And actually, my partner, he advised me not to do it. He was like, oh, you won't have time. You have to pass your exams. But thankfully, I ignored him. He now accepts that one of his worst bits of advice that he ever gave me. So it was good that I ignored him and went ahead. And I think when I started, I wasn't that great. And you do just get better. The more you do, the better you become. And I think with Annsley to mentor me through my intern cat years, you learn a lot. So don't be put off if you think you're not quite ready yet. Do apply anyway.
And just to build on that, if you just want to test the water a little bit and do a couple pieces, just email Rose and I. And there's some folks that are doing little guest posts here and there when they have the time and when a great decision comes out, and we work with them and we mentor them, and it's a great way to get to know people in the profession. So it's a wonderful way to kind of build your career and get involved. And I really recommend it. You won't be sorry to get involved with IPKat.
Sounds like a great way to end that shout out there. But one thing I will just quickly reflect on is that Rose just suggested, Gwilym, that the more you do something, the better you get at it. So there is hope for us yet in the podcasting world.
we do keep trying. We'll get there.
We do keep trying. Yeah. Thanks both. Thanks, Gwilym.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.